ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل، نعم المولى ونعم النصير. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله قاصم الجبارين مبير الظالمين مدرك الحاربين، والصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على النبي الأمي المكي المدني الهاشمي الذي اسمه في السماء بأحمد وفي الأرض بأبي القاسم محمد. وعلى أهل بيته الأطيبين الأطهرين، لا سيما بقية الله في الأراضين، روحي وأرواح العالمين لتراب مقدمه الفداء. ورحمة الله على محبيهم ومواليهم وشيعتهم أجمعين، ولعنة الله على أعدائهم وقتليهم وغاصب حقوقهم ومنكري فضائلهم ملعونين. أما بعد، قال المعصوم عليه السلام: من كان باذلا مهجته وموطنا على لقاء الله فليرحل معنا إني راحل مصبحا إن شاء الله. For the happiness of Hazrat Zahra Marziya, for the enlightenment of the graves of your marhumin, of the graves of the shuhada, ulama and siddiqeen, for the safety of the followers of Ahlul Bayt around the world, for the quietening down of the sisters, and for the hastening of the reappearance of Hazrat Baqiyatullah al-A'zam Arwahun al-Fida. Please recite your loudest salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. All praise is due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. More. I don't think they can come any further. There's been another request. If you can come slightly further forward, there's some more people. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Alhamdulillah. One last night, if you're able to bear the difficulties, and there's more barakah. We're closer together, inshallah. You don't know whose du'as are being accepted next to you, and by the barakah of the mu'min that's next to you, inshallah, our du'as are accepted as well. All praise is due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one who is Rahman and Rahim. We have reached the peak of our azar and the last of our lectures in this series in regards to liqa Allah, meeting with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Imam, leaving Mecca, tells the people that I am leaving those of you that have made that intention to spend your blood in our way and have made a firm intention to meet with Allah, then come with me, for I am leaving Mecca in the morning. Hussein is saying that this is a one-way journey and the destination is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you join him, you reach that salvation. You reach heights of greatness. I said to you a couple of nights ago that that piece of cloth that you sit on, what is it? It is only a piece of cloth, but yet from outside you take off your shoes and you come and you sit here. It is only a piece of cloth, but yet you give it that importance. Why? Because of its association to Imam al-Hussein. These shabih that come round, what are they? They are but replicas or ideas that we have created in our minds. But because they are associated with Aba Abdullah, the one that asks for children while touching them is given. The one that asks for closeness to Allah is given. The one that asks their hajat through these shabi, through these alams, through these liwa, through these julas, through these cradles. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for the sake of Abi Abdullah, gives them whatever they ask for. What is required is that they have that yaqeen, that they are not asking from this individual, but they are asking from Allah for the suffering of Abi Abdullah, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives them. This is why when you go to Karbala, every other Imam, you go to Imam al-Rada, they say when you see the dome of Imam al-Rada, 3 du'as are accepted. You stand underneath the dome of Imam al-Rada and you see the Zarih, 3 du'as are accepted. But yet you go to Karbala and they say you stand under the dome of Abi Abdullah. However much you want to ask, however many du'as you have, ask constantly from Allah and He will continue to grant you for the sake of Hussein. Because Hussein gave everything in the way of Allah. Now a piece of stick or a piece of cloth also becomes the sha'air of Allah, also becomes a sign of Allah, that when we ask Him as a result of that, He grants us.
MashaAllah, MashaAllah.
This is that household. This is that household that we have become connected to. That even the cloth that is associated with them becomes sha'air Allah. I said to you in my first lecture, if the running of Hajara between Safa and Marwa made Safa and Marwa sha'airillah, made them the signs of Allah, then the running of Hussein from the battlefield to the Khayyam, carrying the dead bodies of Akbar, Abbas, Qasim, bringing them back, Zuhair, Burair, each and every one of them, his running was no different to the running of Hajara between Safa and Marwa, such that too becomes sha'air Allah. This is that household that we associate ourselves with. Do not consider these nights to be insignificant. Do not consider these gatherings to be but tradition. Every single part of these gatherings, when understood with the aql, under the guidance, under the religion, under the umbrella of Allah, they become for us wasilas, the routes towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They become our reasons for forgiveness. Otherwise, what about tears? What value do tears have? They say normally your tears have no value. In fact, your buka is makruh. Crying loudly is makruh. But they say, no. You do buka upon Hussein, this is jaiz. You cry for Hussein, it will wipe away all your sins. But what is required? What is required is that we know who Hussein is. We're asking the whole world the question. We're writing it on bottles. We've made websites and we're asking everyone else, who is Hussein? But the last person that I have asked in this entire room, in this entire community, in this entire society is myself. The last person to know who is Hussein is myself. I'm telling everyone else who is Hussein. And the fact that we are bringing non-Muslims and giving them more importance. This is what Gandhi said. This is what Edward Gibbon said. It shows that we have not understood Hussein. Because had we understood Ahl al-Bayt, then what Imam al-Rada says will come forward and say to us that your role as the Shi'as is to take our teachings to the people, leave the rest to us. Why take others? Why is it that we don't have one single saying of Imam al-Hussein? This is what Abi Abdullah said of the environment. This is what Imam said about the rights of the people. This is what the Imam said about various things. Follow what the Imams say. Instead of this is what Ram said, and the Imams themselves are saying, don't sing our praises. Tell the people what we're saying. Don't go around telling people how great we are. Go and tell the people what we're saying. Because what we are saying will take them to perfection. What we are saying is not just for the Shi'as, it is for all of humanity. The last person to know who Hussein is the one that is asking everyone else, do you know who Hussein is? We need to understand. Because when we understand Hussein, then we understand the Hussein of our time. By understanding Imam al-Hussein, we understand the Hujjah of our time. We understand the Imam that we are awaiting. The Imam that is the culmination of every wali, every nabi, every Imam. All of them, when you gather everything that they have worked towards, and you gather everything that they brought, and you squeeze it, and you squeeze the essence out of it, you get the entity of the Imam of our time. He is the final link in the plan of Allah, and yet I am unaware. Imam al-Sadiq salawatullah wa salamu alayhi. The Imam says that when the Qa'im will come with his back to the Kaaba, he will deliver a lecture. He will say, Ayyuhan nas, ya ma'ashir al-khala'iq. Oh, all of existence. He doesn't just talk to the people. He says, oh, all of existence. من أراد أن ينظر إلى آدم والشيث فلينظر إلي فها أنا ذا آدم والشيث. He says, those of you that want to see Adam and Sheeth, then look towards me, because I am Adam and I am Sheeth. Man arada an yanzura ila Nuh wa waladih Sam. Those of you that want to see Nuh and his son Sam, falyanzur ilayya, look towards me, because I am Nuh and I am Sam. Man arada an yanzura ila Musa wa Yusha. Those of you that want to see Musa and Yusha, look towards me. Faha anada Musa wa Yusha, because I am Musa and I am Yusha. Man arada an yanzura ila Ibrahim wa Ismail falyanzur ilayya faha anadha Ibrahim wa Ismail. I am Ibrahim and I am Ismail, look towards me. Man arada an yanzura ila Isa wa Sham'un falyanzur ilayya faha anadha Isa wa Sham'un. He says, those of you that want to see Isa and Sham'un, look towards me, because I am Isa and I am Sham'un. Man arada an yanzura ila Muhammadin wa Ali. Those of you that want to see the Holy Prophet and you want to see Ali ibn Abi Talib, فَلْيَنْزُرْ إِلَيَّ, look towards me, because I am Ali and I am Muhammad. Man arada an yanzura ila Hasani wal Hussein. Those of you that want to see Hassan and Hussein, فَلْيَنْزُرْ إِلَيَّ, look towards me, فَهَا أَنَا ذَا Hassan wal Hussein, because I am Hassan and I am Hussein. Man arada an yanzura ila a'immati min wuld al-Hussein. Those of you that want to see every single one of the Imams from the lineage of Hussein, فَلْيَنْزُرْ إِلَيَّ, look towards me, فَهَا أَنَا ذَا الْأَئِمَّةِ, because I am every single one of those Imams manifest in one entity, and that is the Imam that we await. That is the Imam that we are awaiting, the culmination of every message that came from Allah, gathered in the one entity of our Imam. The question is, what are we doing to be able to welcome our Imam? What are we doing to be able to pave the way for our Imam? What have we done? Have we caused him to cry? Or have we caused him to be happy? Because the narration says, twice a week, the scroll of deeds of the believers are brought in front of him. And twice a week he cries. He says, Ilahi, these are my Shia. This is what they have done. Kareemun min awlad al-kiram. In the ziyarah of Friday, we recite that you are Kareemun min awlad al-kiram, the generous from the lineage of those that are generous, those that are beneficent. Every time you stand and you recite that dua, Allahumma kulli waliyik. The narration says in Mikyalul Makarim fi Fawaid Dua lil Qa'im, it's a book in regards to the benefits of doing dua for the Imam of the time. It says wherever he is, when his Shi'as raise their hands and they pray for him, he says, my Lord, that individual that prayed for me, wherever he is, he stops. He says, that individual that prayed for me, my Lord, keep him safe. Fulfill his hajat. Imagine that Imam. He's thinking about us all the time, and yet we are unaware. We are unaware of his pain. We are unaware of what he wants from us. How unjust are we? What have we done to pave the way for him? What have we done to help, ease? And it's different ways that we can help pave the way for the Imam. The basic step, Ku anfusakum wa ahlikum nara. Save yourselves and your children from the fire of hell. First save yourselves, then save your families from the fires of hell. This is one way. The other way that we pave it is by propagating his message, by bringing about a change in wider society. That's what we need. And one of the other ways is strengthening projects that bring forward the message of the Imam. And on that note, I've been asked one last time that the Husayniyah is doing a collection for donations for the running cost of the Husayniyah and the debts that they have. So the brothers are going to come around for about a minute or 2 minutes, inshallah. No longer than that, because I'm on a tight schedule as well, and I have a lot to say tonight. But please, those of you that can, please do contribute in this way in order to pave the way for the future of our Imam Arwahul al-Fida. Please recite salawat as the brothers go around. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. One of the ways that we are preparing ourselves is to be able to change ourselves. Ku anfusakum wa ahlikum nara. Save yourselves and your families from the fire of hell. And over the last couple of nights, or the last 7 or 8 nights, we've been looking at exactly this aim. How is it that we save ourselves from ourselves? One of the Arafa would say, that do the dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Ya Ilahi, save me from me. Save myself from myself. That nafs al-ammara that exists within me, that animalistic schema, that base schema that is within me, that inclines me towards doing evil, though in and of itself it's not bad. This is something that needs to be understood, that in and of itself it is not bad. It is the basic schema for all of existence. We said this. It's not bad, but it's bad for humankind because he was given aql. He was given the intellect. And so as a result, the intellect must temper his animalistic desires. And when they temper his animalistic desires, it allows him to progress towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we have spoken about how the nafs is inclined towards the dunya. It is inclined towards loving the world. It wants to attach itself to the world. It wants to tell you to eat this, eat it now, even though you're not hungry. It wants to tell you don't fast. It wants to tell you, how are you going to stay hungry for so long? It wants to tell you don't sleep such a little amount of time. You should sleep more. You're tired, which we spoke about yesterday. It will tell you, why are you moving away from the world? Come on, chase it, chase it. Why are you trying to do other charitable works? You need to be earning your own money. How are you trying to save others? The nafs, it tries to pull you away, because tazkiyatun nafs, the nafs is like an animal, is used to the easy life. It doesn't want to do anything hard. It doesn't want to be forced to pray. It doesn't want to be made to fast. It doesn't want to sleep for 4 hours or 5 hours. It doesn't want you to restrict or control your tongue. No, it wants you to do all of these things, because that's what its defense mechanism is. It doesn't want you to be patient. Instead, it wants you to be angry. It wants you that if someone speaks against you, or someone hurts your pride, or someone pushes you, or someone asks you to move forward, you want to get angry, because that's what it wants. Because that's what it needs. That's what it thrives off. That's anger. It wants to be angry. It wants you to be angry. It wants people to be afraid of you because of your anger. Because that's how every other animal operates. It's how the animal kingdom is. It's survival of the fittest. So it's inclining and it's dragging you towards that anger. And anger, according to the narrations, is that flame that is kindled by Shaitan himself. It's an ember that exists. قوة الغضبية. And all he does is blow. Just makes it heat up. He gives it some oxygen. And all of a sudden it erupts. He doesn't do anything. Your shaitan, he's only going to be punished for the one sajda he didn't do. Everything else is on us. We're not going to turn around and go, actually God, he made me do it. No, the Quran is saying, no. See, look, the example of shaitan, that he will say to a man, ikfur, do kufr, falamma kafar. He'll say to them, disbelieve. فَلَمَّا كَفَرْ, and they will disbelieve. Then on the day of Qiyamah, he'll turn around and say, قَالَ إِنِّي بَرِيءٌ مِنْكَ, I seek distance from these people. إِنِّي أَخَافَ اللَّهَ رَبَّ الْعَالَمِينَ, I'm scared of God. That shaitan, the whole time that we blame him, all he does is whisper. He doesn't physically make you do the haram that we do. He just whispers. And so as a result, he's only going to be punished for that one sajda that he refused to do. But along the way, all that anger, all that pride, all that lying, all of that thing that I brought about in myself, I'm going to be punished for it. On that day, you'll be like, hey, nothing to do with me. That's your own problem. I didn't tell you to do it. I just whispered. You did it yourself. And anger is that sort of thing. That your shaitan himself, he whispers. And Amir al-Mu'mineen says, anger is insanity. He says, because a person who becomes angry, after a little while, when he calms down, he feels bad about his anger. This is insanity. He says, however, if an individual becomes angry and does not feel bad about his anger, know that he has become insane. His insanity is ingrained within him. For us, it's a status symbol. He's angry. He has this presence about him. No one dares say anything to him. No one dares question him, because he wants to keep everyone at an arm's length, or he wants to keep everyone fearful of himself. Also walk around like, he owns everything. And this is what the nafs wants. We have a couple of riwayats that I want to share with you in regards to anger, and then what we'll do is then we'll move on to the other couple of topics that I want to touch on tonight as well. But before I do that, if I could just ask you all, please, again, to shift forward. We're almost outside the door at the moment, so if you wouldn't mind just shifting slightly closer to each other with a loud salawat. Ahsan, thank you very much. Ahsan. Another loud salawat, please. So the Holy Prophet says, the one that controls his anger, there is no one stronger than him, no one tougher than him in the world. And he says, curb your anger, control your anger. What is the result of controlling your anger? That Allah will control His punishment on you. You control your anger in this world, in that world there will be safety from the punishment of God. And then, how is it that a person can control their anger? The narrations say that once you become angry, go and do ghusl. Because anger is fire, it comes from fire. So by pouring water on yourself, you'll cool it down. If you can't go and do ghusl, the very least that you should do is wudu. When you become angry. Then Amir al-Mu'mineen is advised by the Holy Prophet. The Holy Prophet says to him, Ya Ali, every time, if he says first and foremost, don't get angry. He says, but if you get angry, Ya Ali, then sit down. Sit down and remember your insignificance in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Remember that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is clement, how patient He is with you every time you challenge Him, every time you turn against Him. He says, remember that. When you're sitting, remember Allah's clemency and patience towards you. And then ask for forgiveness. Generally, when we get angry, we don't think about anything. But if we sat down and thought, why am I angry? What exactly is it that has made me angry? And then we'll say, oh, it's because of this, and this person angered me, and blah, 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 And it boils down, and you take it down, it boils down to pride. And then you break that down, you break it down, and it comes back to hubb ad-dunya, love of the world. It all goes back to that. And when a person considers themselves to be insignificant, when a person considers themselves to be of no use or insignificant in front of Allah, then what happens? He doesn't get angry. No one can offend him. No one can bring, that sort of offense to him that he loses his temper. He does this. There is one time that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says anger is good. And that is when He says to Hazrat Musa, He says, "Oh Musa, do you know which group will be granted my throne, the shade of my throne on the day when there is no shade for anyone?" Hazrat Musa says, "No, Ya Allah." He says, "Musa, it is those individuals that only got angry for my sake when they saw people disobeying my religion." When we saw people deviating, we see people moving away from the truth. That should make us angry. When we see people, going towards haram, going towards shirk, this should make us angry. We shouldn't sit there and go, "Oh, wow, he's got a beautiful voice." Shirk. Anyone is associating individuals or the A'immah with Allah and bringing them on the same level, or na'udhu billah, greater than that, should make us angry. Not sit there and go, "Wow, what a voice. What is he saying?" It's not acceptable. When we see someone do sajda to something ghayr Allah, other than Allah, this should make us angry. Why? Because we understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the only individual that we need to do sajda to. Doing sajda to everything else is not jaiz. Is not jaiz. This should make us angry at this shirk. It should make us angry. There is no one, a group of people, a group of women, in fact, they came to the Holy Prophet and they said, Ya Rasulullah, we love you so much, we want to do sajda to you. Yeah? And the Holy Prophet said, know that sajda is not allowed to anything other than Allah. And if there was ever an entity to whom sajda would have been jaiz after Allah, it would have been the husband. Now you can go home and, you know. That was one of the meekest salawats. I gave you a beautiful riwayah. You know, like over that side they should have been meeker. If ever there had been sajda jaiz or allowed to anything other than Allah, it would have been the sajda of the wife to the husband. This is what the Holy Prophet says. There is no one else other than Allah that is or is allowed to be done sajda towards. Nothing else in this world. Only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Only Allah. This, when we see it happening towards something other than Allah, we should get angry. This is a time when we don't say, oh no, we have to have unity, have to do something. No, this is anger. At that time we're angry. No, we don't go and start beating people, but the anger should be there, that we go forward and say, look, what you're doing is haram. It's not only Allah. Sajda is only for Allah subhanahu. That anger should only be for the sake of Allah, and the one that has anger only for the sake of Allah, he will be given the shade of the throne, the arsh of Allah on the day of Qiyamah, when no one else will have any sort of shade. Because he got angry for the sake of Allah. Anger is one of the biggest diseases that an individual can suffer from, especially in his youth. And it's unfortunate that the victims of that anger many a times are the parents. Many a times in our youth, the victims of our anger are our parents. And how cursed is that youth that he has the disease of anger and then he takes that anger out on his parents. Because when we look at the parents and we look at the narrations about the parents from the Holy Quran and we look at the hadith, we see that the parents hold a unique position within all of existence. In fact, where Allah speaks about His obedience, He speaks about the obedience of the parents. He doesn't say obedience of your Muslim parents. He says obedience of your parents, whether they are non-Muslim, whether they are Muslim, whether they are Shia, whether they are Sunni, whether they are Salafi, whether they are Wahhabi. It doesn't matter. If they are your parents, they require your respect. In fact, Imam al-Sajjad in Risalat al-Huquq says, the right of your father is that you should know that he is your root, and you, every good that you see within yourself that pleases you about yourself, know that it has come from your father, and thank Allah for giving you a father like that. How is it possible that you get angry? How is it in that youth that I start to think that I know better, and their kind words, their words of wisdom now become the ranting of old men and women? When he talks about the mother, he says, and the right of your mother is that you should know أنها حملتك حيث لا يحمل أحد أحدا, that she carried you in a place where no one carries anyone. وأطعمتك من ثمرة قلبها لا يطعم أحدا أحدا, and she fed you that fruit of her soul, a food that no one feeds anyone. And then he says, and she protected you with her hair, with her skin, with her bones, with all of her limbs. And she bore the difficulties of this world. She bore the difficulties of carrying you, the heaviness, the pains. مُسْتَبْشِرَةً بِذَلِكَ. And she was happy at doing that. And she carried you until the divine hand intervened and you were expelled upon the earth. Now the second phase of that mother starts. He says that she did not care whether she was hungry as long as you had eaten. She did not care whether she was naked as long as you were clothed. She did not care if she had to sit in the sun as long as you were shade. She didn't care as long as she was thirsty. She didn't care if she was thirsty as long as you had been given water. She bore all the difficulties of this world, the heat and the cold of this world for your sake. And you should know that she stayed awake so you could sleep. And know that her lap is your throne. Her bosom was your drink. Her womb was your abode. Her nafs, her soul, her existence was protection for you. It was your fort. It was your refuge. No matter how old a person gets, there are only certain things that his mother will understand. There are only certain things that his mother will appreciate about him. And the Imam says, she bore the heat and the cold of this world just for your safety. And so ask Allah. Oh, and then he says that, and so thank her equivalent to what she has done for you. But know that you will not be able to do so unless Allah strengthens you and gives you the opportunity to do so. This is that mother that went through all of these difficulties, and yet she is the first one to face the wrath of our youth, of our anger. The parents, they hold such an important position that the one that is disowned by his parents in this world, they say that he will never smell the scent of Jannah, a scent that travels 70 plus years. He won't even smell it. And in fact, go one step further, not when they're just in this world. There are certain individuals whose parents leave this world and they are happy with their children. But the moment they enter their graves, they pray after some time, Ilahi, I disown my son or my daughter. Why? He says, because since I've been in the grave, they've not recited Fatiha for me. They've not given any sadaqah for me. They've not recited Quran for me. They have forgotten me. So that parent from the grave can disown the children. And then that parent that leaves this world angry with their children, from the grave they can say, Ya Allah, I take my son and my daughter back. Because they gave sadaqah on my behalf. They recited salah on my behalf. They did all these hasanat on my behalf. The parents, they are the gateway towards Allah. When we cry after losing our parents, do not cry because you've lost the physical existence of that person. Cry that you have lost a way towards Allah. Because when you have difficulties in your life, ask your mother to pray. Because Allah does not reject the dua of the mother for her son. And they say, if your mother is not alive, then go to her grave and ask Allah for the sake of your mother to be given ease from your difficulties, for having your du'as accepted. And here it is not whether your mother is Muslim or non-Muslim. As long as she is a mother for you, she requires that you give her respect. And she's the gateway towards Allah. She is our path. Their happiness is our salvation. Their sadness is what is called, or what will lead to our demise, which will lead to our destruction. And then when we enter into that afterlife, that death, that reality that each and every one of us forget, is one of the most easiest things to forget in our life. In fact, it's the thing that we forget over and over, death. It's the one certainty that we're all certain of, but we choose to ignore. We've all got to go there. We've all got to walk that journey. We've all got to face the pains of the sakarat. We all have to face the difficulties of the grave. And as the fourth Imam says in Dua Abu Hamza Thumali, he says, فَمَا لِي لَا أَبْكِي. For what reason should I not cry? أَبْكِي لِخُرُوجِ نَفْسِي. I cry for the time that my soul will be taken from my body. أَبْقِي لِظُلْمَةِ قَبْرِي. I cry, أبكي لظلمة قبري. I cry for the darkness of my grave. أبكي لضيق لحدي. I cry for the narrowness of my grave. أبكي لسؤال منكر ونكير إياي. I cry for the time when Munkar and Nakir will come and question me. أبكي لخروج من قبري عريانا ذليلا عاملا على الثكل انظر مرة عن يميني وأخرى عن شمالي إذ الخلائق شأن غير شأني. So I cry for the time when I will be taken out from my grave again, naked, humiliated, carrying upon my back the burden of my sins. I will look to my left and I will look to my right, and no one will be concerned about me. No one will care. لكل امرئ منهم يومئذ شأن يغنيه. It is that day when no one cares about anyone. You see the love of the mother. But on that day, she will say, away from me. You see how much a father loves you. On that day, he will say, I'm not associated to this individual. That's our reality. That's something that we forget over and over and over. And the narrations from the Imams come that, when your sin are so great, or when you want to sin, or when you think that you've strayed from the path, the Imam says, he says, remember 3 times within your life. The first time he says that when you want to go towards haram, he says, remember that time when your bones will be ripped from their sockets and your limbs will be pulled apart after you have been buried in that grave. The narrations say that from the sheer force of the fishar of the qabr, the pressing of the grave, says the eyes of the individuals will come out of their skulls and reach their chests. He says, remember that time when you will be pulled apart within your grave. He says, remember that time when everyone will bury you and walk away. And at that time, the voice for the believers will come. From that distance, that voice will come. You say, Abdi, this is my slave. Uhuduk, have they all left you? They've left you alone. Come, let me be your aid. He will remember us then if we remember him now. But if we forget Allah now, in that grave, when every single individual leaves us, every single individual walks away, and we're begging them not to go, we will beg them. We'll beg them not to go. We'll beg them to stay because of the fear of that grave. At that time, only our good deeds will help us. And then he says, remember the third thing to remember in order to save you. He says, remember the time when the maggots and the worms will begin to fall from your nose, having chewed through your skull. That is our reality. That this physical existence that I have so much pride of, I have so much pride over it, it is only going to be the feed of maggots and worms. What will remain forever is my purity of intention, is my a'mal. It is those things that will help me in that journey. Nothing else from this world will help me. On that day, everyone will be alone. In Dua al-Hazeen, what we recite after Salatul Layl, there's a beautiful couple of lines. We start raising our hands. عفوك عفوك يا مولا قبل السرابيل القطران. Forgive me, O my Master, before they make me wear the clothes of hell. عفوك عفوك يا مولا قبل جهنم والنيران. My Lord, forgive me before the fires of Jahannam. عفوك عفوك يا مولا قبل أن تغل الأيدي إلى الأعناق. Says, my Lord, forgive me before the time my hands are tied around my neck. That is where we are going. That is our end. That is the reality of our situation. Karbala is that place where we can reform. The days of Ashura are the days of revolution. They're the days that we can incline ourselves towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But only if we choose to do so. It's not necessarily me. Or the Imam could even come and speak. Ulama could come and speak. No one can change you unless you wish to change yourself. No one can reform you unless you want to reform yourself. It is only ourselves that can reform ourselves. That's why we pray, oh Allah, save me, or save myself from myself. That is the message of Karbala, the one of reform. Otherwise, why is it that Imam al-Hussein gave everything? He gave everything in this path. There's nothing that he had left. Everything. Even that 6-month-old. What else is there left? What else is there left? When a man is forced to give his 6-month-old child, every single one of the shuhada went out. But Imam al-Hussein never called out to his Shia. Ali Akbar went. And yes, it was difficult on the Imam. We heard that the Imam came to the body of Ali Akbar. Ala dunya ba'dik al-afa. My son, what pleasure is there left in this dunya after you? He went to the body of Qasim. He said, how difficult is it, Qasim, for your uncle to bear this, that you called out to him and he was unable to reach. He saw the body of Qasim trampled. You heard, وَضَعَ صَدْرَهُ عَلَى صَدْرِهِ. He placed his chest on the chest of Qasim such that the feet of Qasim were dragging along the ground because Qasim's body had been trampled. But even then, he called out to Banu Hashim. He called them and said, help. It's a cry for Qasim. See, in our lives, there are times when, we have difficulties and we sit amongst our family and we cry. And we tell our family members about it. Because that difficulty is enough for them to bear. But then there comes a time when there is an even bigger difficulty. That now, if you told your family members about how you're feeling, that your family members wouldn't be able to bear it. And so you look for people outside of your family that you can tell how you're bearing, how you're feeling. In Karbala, Abi Abdullah did the same. Abbas was left at the banks of Furat. فَبَكَ الْحُسَيْنِ بُكَاءً شَدِيدًا. Hussein cried so loudly we'd never heard him cry. But he never called out to anyone. He told Ahlul Bayt about it. He cried amongst the women of Ahlul Bayt. He cried with those of his family. But there is one such shahadat that the Imam calls out to his Shias because he can't tell anyone in the family. No one can bear it. The last wasiyah of the Imam says, Shi'ati, my Shias, whenever you drink cold water, remember me. أو سمعتم بغريب أو قتيل فاندبوني. And when you hear of someone that was killed while alone, oppressed, then do nudba over me. فأنا صبت الذي بغير جرم قتلوني. Because I am the son of Rasulullah that was killed having no crime, and I am the one whose body was trampled under the hooves of the horses after he was killed. And then he says, Shi'ati, ليتكم في يوم عاشوراء جميعا تنظروني. He says, my Shias, how I wish. Nowhere does the Imam pray for this. But here he says, my Shias, how I wish you were there on the plains of Karbala with me. كيف أستسقي لطفلي فأبوا أن يرحموني. How, and you would have seen how I took my 6-month-old child out in order to ask for water and see what mercy they had upon him. At the final time, when everyone had gone, Abi Abdullah came and stood at the tents. هَلْ مِن نَاصِرٍ يَنْصُرُنَا. You'll hear it tomorrow. Then he says, Ya Zainab, bring to me my child Ali al-Asghar. Let me say one final salam to him. They bring the child to Imam al-Hussein. The intention of Abi Abdullah was to say his final salam. But something happened that made Hussein turn and take the child towards the battlefield. And I don't know what it is, but maybe it was the fact that Hussein was a father. And as the Maqatil describe Ali Asghar, they say his skin had yellowed as a result of thirst. They say that the child had no strength within him. All he could do was open and close his mouth. It was like a fish that had been taken out of water. So Abi Abdullah, looking down at his son, he turns towards the army of Yazid. He takes the child, he holds him in his hand. He says, if there is anyone amongst you, just give this child a drop of water. How madhloom is Hussein? How ghareeb is Hussein? That he doesn't have a drop of water for his 6-month-old child. And he's now asking the army of Yazid. Umar ibn Sa'ad turns to Harmala. He says, Harmala, cut off the words of Hussein. Harmala says, who shall I go for, the father or the son? He says, you see that white spot on the neck of Ali al-Asghar? They say, Harmala, he took out a 3-headed arrow. A 3-headed arrow that is used in the slaughter of camels. Tell me, where is a 6-month-old child and where is a camel? Harmala fires it. Abi Abdullah asking for this army to have mercy. Holding the child, Harmala fires the arrow. and aims it towards the neck of Ali Asghar. And do you know how it entered into the neck of Ali Asghar? Your Imam in one of the Ziyarat al-Nahiya, he says, Assalamu ala al-tifl al-radhi. He says, my salam be upon that child, madbuh min al-uzn ila al-uzn, that was slaughtered from ear to ear. Hussein holding the child within his hand. He looks down. He tells me, what will Hussein do? They say when Mukhtar began to take revenge, and they started to come to the Imam and say, Fulan has been killed, Fulan has been killed. The Imam said, tell us, has Hurmala been caught? Has Hurmala been caught? They said, when they finally caught Hurmala, they said, Mukhtar said to him, Mal'oon, tell me, what is it that you did in Karbala? He said, Mukhtar, I fired 4 arrows. He said, what were those arrows? He said, I fired 1 arrow into the eye of Abbas. The second arrow I fired into the water bag of Abbas. Says the third arrow I fired was into the neck of the 6-month-old son of Hussein. And he says there was one other arrow, and that was the arrow, 3-headed poisoned arrow, that I fired into the chest of Hussein on the day of Ashura. And Mukhtar looks at him. He says, Mal'oon, did your heart not break for Hussein at any time, that you did so much dhulm? Will you hear what his reply is? He says, Mukhtar, now that you ask me, there was one time that my heart broke for Hussein. Do you know when I fired that 3-headed arrow into the neck of Ali Asghar, and I looked at the face of Hussein, and Hussein looked down at the child, and his face said that, my Lord, I have nothing else to give. And I knew at that time that Hussein was truly Gharib. Said, I knew Hussein had no one by his side. Hussein had no one by his side at that time. Abi Abdullah takes the child back. Tomorrow you will do it in the Amal. You will walk 7 times back and forth, because Hussein carried the child. And he walked 7 times back and forth. Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Radam qada'ihi wa tasliman li amri. 7 times he walked forward and back. Why is it that Hussein did this? They say maybe as he was walking forward, he said, how will I show Ruqayya? And so he walked back. And then he probably went forward thinking, how am I going to explain to Rabab? And so he comes back. And like this, 7 times Hussein walked back and forth towards the tents. When he finally reached the tents, Rabab came towards Abi Abdullah. When he moved back the Abah, she said only one thing, Ya Buraya mithluka yunhar. My son, are children like you slaughtered in the way of the camels? Are children as young as you slaughtered? Imam al-Hussein, he takes the child. He takes the child. Those of you that have children will know. He takes the child behind the tents, and he begins to dig the grave in the sands of Karbala. And before he places Ali Asghar in the grave, the Maqatil say, nowhere in Karbala do you find the intervention or the voice from the heavens. Nowhere do you find it upon the death of any shaheed. But they say Hussein was so broken at the death of Ali Asghar that before putting him into the grave, he held up to Ali Asghar and he cried so loudly that a nida was heard from the heavens. Hussein, leave the child. We have wet nurses waiting for him in heaven. Abi Abdullah places the child in the grave. As he begins to pour the burning sands back, he hears someone running from behind him. He turns around. It's Rabab. She says, Ya Mawla, let me see my son one last time. ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين. Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive our sins. Pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the sake of Rabab to forgive the sins of our parents. Ya Allah, those of our parents that are alive, give them long lives. Those of our parents that have left this world, give them a place next to Ali Muhammad in Jannah. Ya Allah, those who are ill, Ilahi, many that have asked us for dua. Many have asked us for dua, and on these nights, these are the nights of dua. The sixth Imam says, he says that if you want your dua to be accepted, give the wasila of that madloom 3 times. And the person asked, which madloom? He says, the 6-month-old child of Hussein, because he had no crime, but they killed him. Said Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala never rejects the dua of the one that gives the wasila and gives the name of Aliun Asghar. We ask Allah in the name of Ali Asghar. For what time? What time? Ali Asghar was placed in the grave. Covered. It was very difficult for Imam al-Hussein. But every time I recite this masa'ib, the mothers that are here, those that are parents, every time I recite this masa'ib is incomplete without telling you what happened on the 11th of Muharram. It was difficult for Abi Abdullah. It was difficult for Imam al-Hussein. But on the 11th of Muharram, how difficult was it for Rabab? When they begin to count the heads of the Shuhada, they say one head is missing. Where is the head of the 6-month-old son of Hussein? They say that 40 men mounted upon their horses with spears in their hands, they rode along the plains of Karbala. They struck the ground of Karbala. They began striking. Rabab is watching. One Mal'oon strikes the ground. When he pulls out his spear, the body of Ali Asghar